In this lesson, we're going to discuss grids. If you'd like to follow along, go under the File menu to Open, and in the Working Files folder in Chapter number 3, select 0304 Grids and just click Open. One of my favorite features back when InDesign CS5 was introduced was something called Gridify. Let me show you how it works. I'm going to go to my rectangle tool. You can hit your M key to get there very quickly. And I'm going to go to the upper left-hand corner of my margins and just start clicking and dragging. And I'm going to drag all the way over to my right margin without letting go of my mouse. And I'm going to hit my up arrow. Hitting my up arrow will create rows. If I hit my up arrow again, I have 2 rows. If I hit my right arrow, I'm going to get columns. If I hit it again, I have 3 columns. And if I don't let go of my mouse, I can continue dragging all the way down to the bottom right corner of my margins. And I have a grid of 9 rectangles that fill my margins. Really kind of nice. I wonder if I can do the same thing when placing images in InDesign. Why don't we scroll down to the next page and give it a shot? Now I know we haven't talked at all about placing images, but we will in an upcoming chapter. I'm going to go to my selection tool, the black arrow at the top of my tools panel, and just go to File, Place. And I'm going to need to navigate inside the Working Files folder to a folder called Links. And in the Links folder, I'm going to select randomly 9 images. I'm just going to start at the first image, hold down my mouse, and just start dragging until I have 9 images selected. Then I just click Open. This is going to load all of the images into something called a loaded brush. I'm going to go back to the upper left-hand corner of my margins and just start clicking and dragging all the way across to my right margin. Now, I'm going to press my up arrow and I'm getting rows. Now, I'm going to press my right arrow and I'm going to get columns, adding a column with each time I press my right arrow. When I let go, I have a grid of 9 images. Really kind of cool. Why don't we scroll down to the next page? Another helpful feature when you're working on grid-based layouts is something called Document Grid. Why don't we turn on the Document Grid? If you go under your View menu to Grids and Guides, you'll see in the sub-menu Show Document Grid. If you select that, it will turn on the grid. And let me just go to my zoom tool. You can hit your Z key to get there very quickly. And I'm just going to click and drag across the width of my layout. And you can see I have a major grid line once every inch and 8 subdivisions. And if I go to my rectangle tool, you can hit your M key to get there very quickly. I'm going to go to one of the major grid intersections and just click and drag with my rectangle tool to make a rectangle. But it doesn't seem to be doing what I want. That's because I only turned on half the feature. Let me let go of my mouse and I'm going to hit Delete. If I go back under the View menu to Grids and Guides, I also want to turn on something called Snap to Document Grid. So when I'm drawing or moving objects, they will actually snap to this grid. So I'm going to go to that major grid intersection again and just click and drag, and you can see how as I'm clicking and dragging, it is snapping to the grid lines. Let me go to another grid intersection and click and drag, and you can see it's making it really easy to not only position my objects so they all line up perfectly with each other, but also I can make them the same size if I want. So a very useful feature. But what if I wanted more subdivisions in my grid? Maybe I want 16. At any time, I can go into Preferences. Why don't we do that? Command K on a Mac, Control K on a PC, and just go to Grids. And you can see there's a grid line every 1 inch. Those are the major grid lines. And then there's subdivisions, and there are 8 going in both directions. I can change that to any number I want. I'm just going to leave it at 8. How do I turn off the grid? Same way I turned it on. Go under the View menu to Grids and Guides, and this time go to Hide Document Grid. But don't forget to turn off Snap to Document Grid. Let me show you why. It's still snapping to that grid, so it's jumping all over the place. Make sure to go back under the View menu again to Grids and Guides and uncheck Snap to Document Grid. So now the rectangle will move nice and smoothly without snapping to anything. Why don't we scroll down to the next page? And on this page, I want you to hit Command 0 on a Mac, Control 0 on a PC so you can see the entire page. And I wonder if there's any other ways to create grids. Well, if I go to my rectangle tool and just click and drag from the upper left margin corner, and I'm just going to fill my margins with a rectangle. A lot of people don't know that InDesign comes with scripts, and you don't have to know anything about scripting in order to use them. And some of them do some really cool things. Why don't we open our Scripts panel? It's under the Window menu, Utilities, Scripts. And in the folder that's called Application, click the disclosure arrow, the little arrow to the left of the folder, and then do the same thing with the Samples folder. And we're going to go into the JavaScript folder. And we're going to look for a script that's called Make Grid. And all you need to do is double click on it. And you get a dialog box. It's asking how many rows and columns you want. Well, why don't we make it 4 rows and 3 columns? You can also specify the gutter, which is the distance between the objects that it's going to create. You can do it for the row and also the column. I'm going to leave it at the default, which is 12 points. I'm also going to leave the default for frame type at unassigned, but you can also create something called a text frame and a graphic frame. I'm going to leave it at unassigned. Retain formatting and contents. Well, there really is no contents at this point, but I'm just going to leave it checked. Delete original object, so it's going to get rid of this object that's currently on our screen. All you need to do now is just click OK, and you get a grid with those 12 rectangles. But what if I wanted to create guides for each one of these rectangles? Let me go to my selection tool, the black arrow, and just click and drag across all 12 of these objects. And if I go to a script called Add Guides and double click, it's asking me, okay, where do you want to put the guides? Add guides at top, left, bottom, right. Do I want a horizontal center? Well, if I don't, I can uncheck it. Do I want a vertical center? Let's uncheck that. Do I want my guides around each object or the entire selection? If I select entire selection, it's only going to put 4 guides in that align to the bounding box around our entire selection. I'm going to choose each object. Do I want to offset the guides horizontally or vertically? That will place the guides a distance away from the original objects at the amount specified for both offsets. At the amount that I specify for each offset, I'm just going to click OK. It's putting in those guides in both directions automatically. That is really kind of cool. In the next lesson, we're going to continue discussing layouts.